Berlin, spring 2023. Lena Müller woke up every day at 5:30 a.m. Not because she had to, her office was only 20 minutes away from her small apartment in Neukölln, but because that quiet hour, before the city woke up completely, was hers alone. It was the moment when she drank her coffee in peace, browsed the news on her tablet, and above all, mentally reviewed her plans for the future. At 34, Lena had built a life she was deeply proud of. The daughter of a Brazilian nurse who had emigrated to Germany in the 1990s and a German father she had met in Sao Paulo, she always knew she would have to work twice as hard to achieve the same status as her colleagues. And she did. She graduated in business administration from the Free University of Berlin, earned a master's degree in human resources management, and, over the past 6 years, had climbed the ranks at Fisher & Braun Consulting, one of the most respected consulting firms in the German capital. "You are the best HR manager we've ever had," Christian Hoffmann, the company's CEO, used to say. And Lena knew it wasn't just empty praise. Under her management, the talent retention rate had increased by 37%, and she had implemented diversity programs that put Fisher & Braun on Wirtschaftswoche magazine's list of best companies to work for. But on that April morning, as she watched the first golden rays of dawn paint the facades of Berlin's buildings, Lena had no idea that her carefully constructed life was about to fall apart in a way she could never have imagined. The office Fisher & Braun occupied 3 floors of a modern building in Mitte, the financial heart of Berlin. Glass walls, minimalist design, plants everywhere. It was the kind of environment that business magazines loved to photograph. Lena arrived at 7:45 a.m., as usual, greeted Klaus, the security guard at the reception desk, and went up to the 5th floor, where her department was located. "Good morning, Lena." Julia Weber, her assistant, was already there, organizing the day's schedule. "Christian wants to talk to you at 9 a.m. He said it's important." Lena nodded, putting her bag in her office. Christian Hoffmann always wanted to talk about something important. The CEO was known for his intensity, a 48-year-old man, married for 20 years to Sophie Hoffmann, with 2 teenage children, and completely obsessed with the company's growth. He was also the kind of boss who sent emails at 11 p.m. and expected replies before 7 a.m. the next day. But Lena didn't mind. Christian respected her professionally, paid her well, and gave her the autonomy to implement her ideas. In a job market still dominated by middle-aged white men, having a boss who valued her was rare. Or at least that's what she thought. The 9 a.m. meeting Christian was standing in front of his office window when Lena entered, his hands in his pockets, looking out at the city below. He didn't turn around immediately. "Sit down, Lena," he finally said, still with his back to her. There was something different in his voice, a tension she didn't recognize. Lena sat down, crossing her legs, her tablet on her lap, ready to take notes on whatever Christian needed to discuss. Maybe a new project, maybe the expansion to Munich they had been planning. When Christian finally turned around, Lena noticed the deep circles under his eyes, the stubble, the slightly crooked tie. He looked exhausted. "I need you to do something for me," he began, sitting down behind his desk. "Something confidential, very confidential." "Of course," Lena replied, professional as always. "What is it?" Christian took a deep breath. "I need you to process a contract termination, but it has to be done discreetly. No fuss, and quickly." Lena frowned. Terminations were part of her job, but Christian's tone suggested something different. "Who?" "Sandra Meyer." The name hit Lena like a ton of bricks. Sandra Meyer was the company's marketing manager, a brilliant 29-year-old woman who had developed award-winning campaigns for some of Fisher & Braun's biggest clients. More importantly, Sandra was married to Thomas Meyer, one of the company's minority partners. "Sandra!" Lena couldn't hide her surprise. Why? She's one of our best professionals. The numbers from her department. I know the numbers. Christian cut her off, his voice harder now. It's not a question of performance. It's personal. Personal? Lena leaned forward. Christian, you know I can't process a termination without documented cause, especially someone of Sandra's caliber. Thomas won't find out, Christian interrupted again. Not right away. That's why I need you to be quick and discreet. For the first time in 6 years of working together, Lena felt a deep unease as she looked at her boss. Something was wrong, very wrong. Christian, I need to understand what's going on. If there's a conduct issue, a violation of internal policy, anything, I need to document it. It's protocol. It's the law. Christian was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost a whisper. Just do what I'm asking, Lena. Trust me. But for the first time in her career at Fisher & Brown, Lena realized she didn't trust him. Not completely. The first suspicion. Lena left Christian's office without agreeing to process Sandra's termination. She said she needed to review the contracts, check the legal clauses, consult with the legal department. They were all technical excuses, but they bought her time. Back in her office, she closed the door and stood still for a moment, her mind racing. There was something deeply wrong with that request. Sandra Meyer had no history of problems. On the contrary, she was exemplary, and the fact that Christian wanted to remove her discreetly, without involving her husband, who was a partner. Lena opened her computer and went straight to the HR records. She began reviewing everything related to Sandra Meyer. Performance reviews, time records, archived corporate emails, expense reports. She was looking for anything that would justify a dismissal. She found nothing. Sandra was impeccable. That's when Lena decided to do something she wouldn't normally do, something that technically violated the company's privacy policies. She accessed the building's entry and exit logs, the records that showed when each employee swiped their card at the door sensors. What she found made her heart race. In the last 6 months, Sandra Meyer had stayed in the office after business hours on 43 occasions. That in itself was not unusual. Many employees worked overtime. But what caught Lena's attention was that on all 43 occasions, only one other person had remained in the building at the same time: Christian Hoffmann. And on 38 of those occasions, the two had left the building within 2 or 3 minutes of each other. Lena closed the computer screen, feeling a chill down her spine. She knew what that data suggested. She knew, but she didn't want to believe it. Christian Hoffmann, the married CEO, father of 2, who always talked about family values and corporate integrity, was having an affair with Sandra Meyer. And now he wanted to get rid of her. The weight of knowledge. Lena spent the rest of the day in a fog. She attended meetings, answered emails, approved hires, but her mind was elsewhere. It was on that discovery, on those numbers that didn't lie. At 6 p.m., when most of the employees had already left, Lena was still in her office, looking out the window at the city that was beginning to light up its nightlights. She picked up the phone, hesitated, and then dialed. "Mom?" Maria Müller's warm voice came from the other end. "Lena, dear, what a surprise. Is everything okay?" I need some advice." There was a pause. Maria knew her daughter well enough to sense when something was wrong. What happened? Lena couldn't give her the details, professional confidentiality, but she managed to phrase the question in abstract terms. If you found out something compromising about someone in a position of power, something that could destroy lives, would you say something, or would you pretend you didn't know? Maria was silent for a moment. Then she said, with that wisdom that only mothers possess, "It depends, sweetie. The truth always comes out eventually. The question is, Do you want to be the one who brought it out, or the one who hid it? When Lena hung up, she knew what she had to do. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that decision, that moment of moral awareness, would be the beginning of the end. 3 days later, Lena hadn't been able to sleep properly since that discovery. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the numbers on the screen, those 43 nights, those patterns that didn't lie. She had spent the last 3 days trying to decide what to do with that information. The answer came in a way she didn't expect. It was Thursday around 4 p.m. when Sandra Meyer appeared at her office door. The young marketing manager was visibly shaken, red eyes, hands trembling slightly as she held a folder of documents. "Lena, can I talk to you? In private?" Lena felt her stomach tighten, but she maintained her professional composure. "Of course, Sandra. Come in and close the door." Sandra sat down, placed the folder on the desk, but didn't open it right away. Her eyes scanned the room, as if checking to see if anyone was listening. Then, in a low voice, she said, "Christian asked for my resignation, didn't he?" Lena weighed her words carefully. "Sandra, you know I can't discuss. I know what you talked about." Sandra interrupted, her voice breaking. "He told me. He said you were resisting, asking too many questions." She took a deep breath, trying to control herself. "I need you to know the truth, the whole truth." Lena folded her hands on the table, keeping her face neutral, but inside her heart was racing. "I'm listening." The confession. Sandra opened the folder and began pulling out documents, printouts of emails, text messages, credit card statements. Her voice was steady now, as if she had rehearsed this moment. "It started 8 months ago. I was working on the Mercedes campaign. Christian would stay late to help, or so he said. One night he offered me wine. He said I deserved to relax after all that work. I accepted." Lena remained silent, letting Sandra continue. "It was gradual. Conversations that went on, compliments that seemed professional at first, but then they became personal. He said Sophie didn't understand him anymore, that the marriage was just a facade. I know how it sounds, Lena. I know I'm the idiot in this story." "You're not an idiot," Lena said softly. "You were in a vulnerable position with someone who had power over your career." Sandra gave a bitter smile. "Maybe, but I made choices, terrible choices." She pushed one of the documents toward Lena. "But I'm not the first." Lena took the paper. It was a printed email dated 2 years ago from Christian's personal account to an address she didn't recognize. The content was explicitly romantic. The recipient's name was highlighted in yellow. Petra Albrecht. "Who is Petra Albrecht?" Lena asked, although something in her memory was already beginning to connect. She was a project manager. She worked here for 3 years. She left the company suddenly in 2021. The official version was that she got a better opportunity in Frankfurt. Sandra looked directly into Lena's eyes. "The truth is that Christian ended the affair with her, and she threatened to tell Sophie. He fired her and paid her generous severance in exchange for a confidentiality agreement." Lena felt her blood run cold. This was not an isolated incident. It was a pattern, a systematic pattern of abuse of power. "Sandra, why are you telling me this now?" The young woman took a deep breath. "Because yesterday Christian told me that either I resign voluntarily or he would find a way to fire me for just cause. He said he would fabricate evidence if necessary, forged emails, false reports of misconduct. And the worst part," her voice trembled, "the worst part is that he said if I told Thomas, he would destroy my husband's career too. Thomas owns 15% of the company, but Christian controls the other partners. He can force Thomas out." "That's blackmail," Lena said, feeling anger rise in her chest. "It's illegal." "I know, but who will believe me against him?" Christian Hoffman, the visionary CEO, the exemplary family man, the businessman of the year according to Manager magazine. Sandra had tears in her eyes now. You're the only person in this company who has enough power to do something. You have access to the records, the data, the patterns. You can prove I'm not crazy. Lena looked at the documents scattered across her desk. She looked at Sandra, this brilliant, terrified woman, and then she looked at her own reflection in the window pane. She thought about the conversation with her mother. The truth always comes out eventually. The question is, do you want to be the one who brought it out or the one who hid it? I'll look into it, Lena said finally, but I have to do it the right way, legally, with irrefutable evidence. Sandra nodded, wiping away her tears. Thank you. I knew you were different. The investigation begins. After Sandra left, Lena locked her office door and got to work. She had privileged access as HR manager. She could see records of past employees, severance agreements, extraordinary payments. She started with Petra Albrecht. Petra's file was marked confidential, which in itself was unusual. Lena opened it and found exactly what Sandra had described. A voluntary termination with severance pay 3 times the standard amount, accompanied by an extremely comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. But there was something else. A note in a field that was normally left blank. Sensitive issue resolved directly with CEO. Do not escalate. Lena kept digging. She went to the files from 2019, 2018, 2017, and she found 2 more similar cases. Julia Schroeder in 2019, communications manager, abrupt termination with generous severance pay. Katrin Vogt in 2018, senior analyst, same situation, 4 women in 5 years. All young, all talented, all discreetly removed with money and gag orders. Christian Hoffman wasn't just an unfaithful boss. He was a systematic predator who used his position of power to manipulate female employees and then silence them when they were no longer convenient. Lena printed everything out, discreetly on a printer on the 3rd floor that she knew had no network monitoring. She stored the documents in a folder of her own, which she took home that night. The inevitable confrontation. The next morning, Friday, Lena requested a meeting with Christian. He readily agreed, probably thinking she had finally processed Sandra's dismissal. When Lena entered the room at 10 a.m., Christian was smiling. Finally, do you have Sandra's papers? No, Lena said, closing the door behind her. But I have this. She placed a folder on the table. Christian opened it, and Lena saw the color drain from his face as he recognized the names. Petra, Julia, Katrin, Sandra. What is this? He stammered. It's a pattern, Lena replied, keeping her voice calm but firm. 4 women in 5 years, all romantically involved with you, all removed from the company when they were no longer convenient, all paid to keep quiet. Christian slammed the folder shut. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have proof, Christian. Entry and exit records, archived emails, anomalous termination agreements, and now Sandra is willing to speak publicly. The CEO stood up, slamming his hands on the table. You're making a huge mistake, Lena, huge. I built this company. I hired you. I gave you opportunities no one else would. And I'm grateful for that, Lena said, undaunted. But that doesn't give you the right to abuse your power. It doesn't give you the right to destroy careers, to protect your secrets. Christian stared at her for a long moment. Then his expression changed. The charm disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. Do you know what will happen if you make this public? The company will go into crisis. There will be layoffs. People you hired, people you trained will lose their jobs. And you, he pointed a finger at her, you will be known as the woman who destroyed one of Berlin's most respected companies because of gossip and envy. It's not gossip. It's crimes. Prove it in court, then. Christian said, his voice low and threatening. "But know that I have the best lawyers in Germany. And you, what do you have? Some papers and the word of bitter women?" Lena picked up her briefcase and headed for the door. Before leaving, she turned one last time. "I'm going to the board meeting on Monday, with or without you." The door closed, and Christian Hoffman was left alone in his office, realizing that for the first time in his life, there was someone he couldn't buy, intimidate, or silence. And that enraged him in a way he had never felt before. Fatal weekend. Lena spent the weekend preparing her presentation for the board of directors. Sitting at the table in her small living room in Neukölln, surrounded by printed documents, spreadsheets and notes, she put together an irrefutable dossier. 4 documented cases, clear patterns of behavior, ethical and legal violations, everything organized chronologically, with evidence from emails, records of anomalous payments, excessive confidentiality agreements. On Saturday afternoon, her phone rang. It was Sandra. "Lena, I need to tell you something." The young woman's voice was tense. "Christian called me last night. He's desperate. He offered double the compensation if I sign a new confidentiality agreement by Monday morning." "And are you going to sign?" There was a long pause. "I don't know. Thomas doesn't know anything yet. If this blows up publicly, my marriage is over. And Christian has made it clear that he will destroy me professionally if I testify." Lena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the situation. "Sandra, I understand your fear. But if we let him do this again, there will be a 5th victim, and a 6th. Men like Christian only stop when they are forced to stop." "I know," Sandra whispered, "but I have so much to lose." "We all do," Lena said softly. "But some things are bigger than our fear." When they hung up, Lena wasn't sure if Sandra would show up on Monday, but she would continue anyway. Monday, 8:15 a.m. Lena arrived at the office earlier than usual. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. Thomas Meyer, the 2 other minority partners, and the company's corporate lawyer would be present. Christian too, of course. She was in her office, reviewing her documents one last time, when Julia Weber knocked on the door, her face pale. "Lena, you need to see this." Julia handed her a tablet showing the company's internal portal. There was a statement posted at 7:50 a.m., signed by Christian Hoffman. "It is with regret that I announce structural changes in the HR department. Lena Müller will be transferred to an external advisory position, effective immediately. We thank her for her years of service and wish her success in her future endeavors. The transition will be managed directly by the board." Lena read and reread it, feeling her blood boil. Christian was trying to remove her before she could speak to the board. It was a cowardly move, but a smart one. "He can't do that," Julia said indignantly. "Not without formal proceedings, without—" "He's desperate," Lena interrupted, keeping her cool. "Which means I'm on the right track." She grabbed her briefcase, the complete dossier, and walked straight to the boardroom on the 6th floor, even though it was only 8:30 a.m. Thomas Meyer was already there, apparently summoned by Christian for an emergency meeting. The confrontation in the boardroom. When Lena opened the door to the meeting room, 3 pairs of eyes turned to her. Christian was standing in the middle of a presentation. Thomas Meyer sat on the left, confused, and Klaus Braun, the other founding partner, sat on the right. "Lena," Christian said, his voice controlled but tense, "this is a private board meeting. You were notified about your transfer." "I'm not going anywhere," Lena said, closing the door behind her and placing her briefcase on the table. "Not before you see this." "Lena, I insist that you—" Christian began. "Let her speak," Thomas interrupted. Sandra's husband looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept. "I want to hear what she has to say." Lena opened the dossier. In the last 5 years, 4 female employees of this company have been removed under questionable circumstances, all after personal involvement with the CEO. Each received severance packages 3 to 4 times higher than standard, accompanied by extremely restrictive confidentiality agreements. She began distributing copies of the documents. Christian tried to intervene, but Klaus Braun raised his hand, silencing him. "Continue," the founding partner said, his expression serious. Petra Albrecht, 2021, Julia Schröder, 2019, Katrin Vogt, 2018, and now Sandra Meyer, 2023. Lena placed the photos of the 4 women side by side, all young, all talented, all discarded when they were no longer convenient. Thomas turned pale when he heard his wife's name. Sandra! What does Sandra have to do with this? Just then, the door opened again. Sandra Meyer entered, trembling but determined. Behind her, to everyone's surprise, were 2 other women, Petra Albrecht and Julia Schröder. "It has everything to do with it, Thomas," Sandra said, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." 3 voices, 1 truth. What followed was one of the most tense hours in the history of Fisher & Braun Consulting. One by one, the 3 women told their stories. Petra talked about how Christian had pursued her for months, using late meetings and constant compliments, until she gave in. How the affair lasted 8 months, ending when she mentioned wanting to get pregnant. How Christian fired her the following week, offering money in exchange for her silence. Julia described a similar pattern, the CEO using his position of power, promising promotions, isolating her from other colleagues. When she tried to end the relationship, he threatened to destroy her professional reputation. And Sandra, her voice broken but firm, recounted how Christian had manipulated her feelings, promising to leave Sophie, using her vulnerability against her, and how, when she became pregnant and suffered a miscarriage, he withdrew completely, treating her like a problem to be solved. Thomas Meyer wept openly. Klaus Braun was visibly shocked, and Christian Hoffmann was cornered, his face red with anger and humiliation. "This is ridiculous," he finally exploded. "These are baseless accusations from bitter women who want money. Are you going to believe them instead of me? I built this company. I made you rich." "You abused your power," Klaus said, his voice cold as ice. "Repeatedly, systematically." "I demand an independent investigation," Thomas added, wiping away his tears. "And Christian, you are removed from all executive functions, effective immediately." The final threat. Christian stood up abruptly, the chair falling backward with the impact. "You are making a mistake you will regret." He looked directly at Lena, and there was something in his eyes that sent a chill down her spine. It wasn't just anger, it was hatred, pure, dangerous hatred. "You," he said, pointing at her, "you destroyed everything I built, and you'll pay for it." "Christian, leave," Klaus ordered. "Now, before we call security." The CEO picked up his suit from the back of the chair, walked to the door, but before leaving turned around one last time. "This isn't over, Lena. Far from it." The door slammed, and the silence that remained was heavy, charged with tension and fear. Sandra rushed to hug Thomas, apologizing repeatedly. Petra and Julia sat down, exhausted by the confession. And Lena remained standing, looking out the window at the city outside. She had done the right thing. She was sure of it. But something in the way Christian had looked at her, something in the threat in his voice, made her instincts scream that the danger was only just beginning. And she was right. That night, Christian Hoffmann sat alone in his car in the building's underground parking lot, his hands shaking with rage on the steering wheel. His life was destroyed, his marriage was over, his reputation was in tatters, and all because of a woman who didn't know her place. He picked up the phone and made a call. When they answered, he said just 3 words: "I need help." The response on the other end was brief, but Christian smiled for the first time in days. Lena Müller didn't know who she was messing with, and soon, very soon, she would find out. Tuesday, 2 days later, Lena should have been feeling victorious. The internal investigation had begun, Christian was officially suspended, and the 3 women finally had their voices heard. But instead of relief, she felt only a growing tension, as if something terrible was about to happen. She wasn't wrong. On Tuesday morning, when she arrived at the office, she found her office ransacked. Drawers were open, documents were scattered, and computer files had been accessed during the night. Julia was there, pale, holding a security report. Someone broke in here at 3 a.m. They used an administrative access card that was deactivated at 3:47 a.m. Christian's card, Lena said, feeling her stomach churn. Yes, but by the time security arrived to check, he was already gone. Klaus is furious. He's going to take legal action. Lena walked around the room, checking what had been touched. Her personal drawers, her confidential files, her computer. He was looking for something, or worse, planting something. That's when her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Lena Müller? A male voice, formal, official. Yes, who is this? Inspector Weber, Berlin Police. I need you to come to the station this afternoon. We have some questions about financial irregularities at Fischer & Braun Consulting. Lena's blood ran cold. Irregularities? What kind of... We'd rather discuss it in person. At 3 p.m. Bring your HR records from the last 2 years. The call ended before she could respond. The trap closes. At 2:30 p.m., Lena was at the Schöneberg police station, sitting in a cold, grey interrogation room. Inspector Weber was a middle-aged man with a neutral expression, accompanied by a younger detective, Sabine Koch. Thank you for coming, Ms. Müller, Weber began, opening a thick folder. We are investigating possible embezzlement at Fischer & Braun, specifically anomalous payments processed by the Human Resources Department. Lena frowned. Anomalous payments? All the payments I processed were authorized by management and... These weren't. Detective Koch pushed documents across the table. They were bank transfers, all digitally signed with Lena's credentials, totaling 340,000 euros over 18 months. The recipients were offshore accounts in tax havens. I never authorized this, Lena said, feeling panic begin to rise. These digital signatures could have been forged, cloned. They were made from your computer, using your personal password, at times when you were logged into the building, Weber said calmly. We have the access logs. That's impossible. I never... Lena stopped, the realization hitting her like a punch. Christian. The break-in in her office. He wasn't looking for anything, he was planting evidence. Inspector, I'm being framed. Christian Hoffman, the CEO, had access to my computer and... Yes, we know about the accusations against Mr. Hoffman, Koch interrupted. Accusations that you led, interestingly. And now we've discovered that you were also involved in embezzlement. No, he's framing me because I exposed him. Weber exchanged a glance with Koch. It was clear they didn't believe her. To them, Lena was just another corrupt executive trying to save herself with dramatic accusations. You are being formally charged with corporate fraud and embezzlement. You have the right to an attorney. I strongly recommend you get one. Total isolation. When Lena finally left the police station, it was already night. She immediately called Klaus Braun, but he didn't answer. She tried Thomas Meyer, same thing. She called Julia Weber at the office. Lena, thank God, where are you? Julia, something terrible is happening. Christian framed me for... I know. The police were here. They took your files, your computer, everything. Julia's voice was low, frightened. Lena, Klaus said you're suspended until the investigation is over. He said he can no longer support you publicly. Lena felt the world crumble around her. But the women, the witnesses, Sandra backed out. She signed the confidentiality agreement last night. Petra and Julia too. Christian offered them €500,000 each, plus guarantees that they won't face any legal consequences. They were afraid, Julia continued, and now with you being accused of fraud. Lena, it looks like you made up the accusations against Christian to divert attention from your own crimes. I didn't commit any crime. I believe you, Julia whispered, but no one else does. When Lena hung up, she was alone on a dark Berlin street, trembling, realizing how perfectly Christian had orchestrated her destruction. He hadn't just framed her, he had destroyed her credibility, isolated her from all her allies, and turned her from a hero into a villain. The night visit. Lena returned to her apartment in Neukölln around 10 p.m. She was exhausted, emotionally devastated, but still trying to think of a way to prove her innocence. She needed a lawyer. She needed digital evidence to show Christian's manipulations. She was making tea when she heard the doorbell ring. She looked through the peephole. It was Christian Hoffmann. Her first instinct was not to open the door, to call the police, but something, perhaps curiosity, perhaps desperation, made her unlock the door, keeping the security chain on. What do you want? Christian looked different, disheveled, unshaven, with deep circles under his eyes. But it was the look in his eyes that frightened her. There was something wild there, something unstable. We need to talk, Lena, please. We have nothing to talk about. You framed me, destroyed my life. I can fix everything, he interrupted. I can make the charges disappear. I can restore your reputation. I can even give you a promotion when I get back. When you get back? Lena laughed bitterly. You're finished, Christian. Admit it. His expression hardened. No, you're the one who's finished unless you're smart. He leaned closer, his voice low. Withdraw your accusations publicly. Say you were stressed, that you misread the situations. Do that, and I'll make the evidence of fraud disappear. You want me to lie, to protect you after everything you've done? I want you to be smart. Christian practically shouted, then controlled himself. Sophie has already left me. My children won't talk to me. My reputation is destroyed. But I still have resources, I still have power, and I can use that power to save you or destroy you completely. Lena stared at him through the crack in the door. Get out of my house, now. Christian stood still for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but remember this conversation, Lena. Remember it when you're in prison, when you've lost everything. When no one believes you anymore. He turned and started down the stairs, but stopped halfway. Without turning around, he said loudly enough for her to hear, "Some battles aren't worth winning." When he finally left the building, Lena locked the door, put the chain on, and slid to the floor, trembling. She had done the right thing. She was sure of it. But the right thing was costing her everything. Wednesday, 6:30 a.m. Lena had barely slept. She spent the night researching lawyers specializing in corporate fraud, trying to figure out how she could prove that the transfers were forged. That's when her phone rang. It was her mother, Maria, her voice panicked. Lena, are you okay?" "Mom, what happened? I saw it on the news. Your face is all over the websites. They say you stole hundreds of thousands of euros. That..." Lena quickly opened her laptop. And there it was, her professional photo, taken from the Fisher & Braun website, splashed across the headlines of all the major news sites in Berlin. HR manager accused of embezzling $340,000. Executive used false accusations to cover up her own crimes. Fraud at Fisher & Braun. Investigation reveals years-long scheme. Christian wasn't just destroying her professional life, he was destroying her entire life, publicly, irreversibly. Lena closed her laptop, her hands shaking. And that's when she realized Christian Hoffman wasn't going to stop until she was completely annihilated. Or dead. Lena hadn't left her house in 72 hours. Journalists camped outside her building. Her phone rang incessantly, reporters wanting statements, former colleagues distancing themselves from her, anonymous messages with threats and insults. Her bank account had been frozen by court order, her passport withheld. She was effectively trapped in her own life, watching everything fall apart. It was her mother, Maria, who finally managed to get into the apartment on Thursday afternoon, bringing food and, more importantly, news. "I hired a lawyer for you," Maria said, putting bags in the kitchen. "Hendrik Brown, specialist in corporate crimes. He'll be here tonight." "Mom, we don't have the money for—" "I have savings, and your life is worth more than any amount." Maria held her daughter's face with both hands. "You didn't do anything wrong, Lena, and we're going to prove it." But when Hendrik Brown arrived at 7 p.m., his words did not bring the comfort Lena had hoped for. "The situation is complex," the lawyer said, sitting at the table, reviewing the documents. "The digital evidence is substantial. Valid electronic signatures, access to the systems during your working hours, transfer patterns over months." "But I didn't do it," Lena repeated for the 10th time. "Christian Hoffman had access to my computer, my credentials." "I believe you," Hendrik interrupted gently. "But we need proof. We need a digital forensic expert who can demonstrate that there was tampering, and that takes time, time we may not have." "What do you mean?" "The prosecutor is building a strong case. There's a preliminary hearing scheduled for Monday. If we don't get concrete evidence by then, you could be formally charged and remanded in custody." Lena felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Prison. She could actually go to prison for crimes she didn't commit. The unexpected source. It was almost midnight when Lena's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her accept the call. "Lena Müller," a nervous female voice. "Who is this?" "My name is Anna Hoffman, Christian Hoffman's daughter." Lena was silent, shocked. Anna was Christian's eldest daughter, 17 years old. Lena knew her only from photos in the office. "Anna, how did you get my number?" "It doesn't matter. I need to talk to you. In person, tomorrow. I know things about my father. Anna, I don't know if this is a good idea. Please." The girl's voice was desperate. "My father is destroying you, but he also destroyed my family, and I can't stay silent anymore." They agreed to meet at a discreet cafe in Kreuzberg, away from the media spotlight. Friday, 10 a.m. Café Morgenrot. Anna Hoffmann was younger than she looked in the photos. Pale face, deep dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling as she held a cup of tea. Lena sat across from her in a secluded corner of the cafe, both wearing beanies and sunglasses. "Thank you for coming," Anna began. "I know it's risky for you." "Why do you want to help me?" The girl took a deep breath. "Because my father isn't who people think he is, and I'm tired of protecting his secrets." Anna pulled a tablet out of her backpack and placed it on the table. 2 years ago, I installed an automatic backup app on my father's personal computer. It was for a school project on digital security he never knew, and that backup captured everything. She turned the tablet toward Lena. On the screen were folders and folders of files, emails, messages, financial documents. "It's all here," Anna said quietly. "The affairs with the employees, the gag orders, the threats he made, and—" She paused, her eyes filling with tears. "The plans to frame you." Lena felt her heart race. "Anna, this could save me. But why are you doing this? He's your father." "He was my father," Anna corrected, her voice breaking. "But the man I know now, he destroyed my mother. He destroyed our home. And now he's destroying an innocent woman just because she dared to tell the truth." She pushed the tablet toward Lena. "Take it, copy everything, use it as you need. Your father will know it was you." "I know," Anna wiped away her tears. But some things are more important than fear. The irrefutable proof. Lena spent the rest of the day with Hendrik Brown, reviewing the files Anna had provided. It was a goldmine of evidence. Emails from Christian to a hired hacker discussing how to clone Lena's credentials. Bank transfers showing payments from Christian to offshore accounts, the same accounts Lena had allegedly used. Text conversations where Christian planned, step by step, how to destroy Lena's reputation. "This is gold," Hendrik said, his eyes shining. "With this, we not only prove your innocence, we completely destroy his case. But Anna, she'll suffer terrible consequences." "She's a minor and acted to prevent a greater crime," Hendrik explained. "She'll be protected. But Christian," he smiled, "Christian is truly finished now." They handed the evidence directly to Inspector Weber that afternoon. The police officer's expression changed dramatically as he reviewed the files. "Mein Gott," he muttered. This is a complete confession. Christian Hoffman committed multiple crimes," Hendrik said formally. "Corporate fraud, falsification of evidence, obstruction of justice, blackmail, and all of it is documented in his own files." Weber looked at Lena, and there was something close to an apology in his eyes. "Frau Müller, on behalf of the Berlin police, I apologize for treating you as a suspect. We will issue an arrest warrant for Christian Hoffman immediately." Friday, 7 p.m. The escape. But when the police arrived at Christian's house in Grunewald, he was not there. Sophie Hoffman, still living on the property despite the separation, said that Christian had left the house at 3 p.m., taking a suitcase with him. "He said he needed to travel on business," Sophie explained, confused. "But he was acting strange, nervous. He said something about fixing everything." Inspector Weber immediately issued alerts to airports and train stations. But Christian Hoffman had resources, connections. He could be anywhere. It was Anna who called Lena at 8:30 p.m., her voice terrified. "Lena, my father called me 10 minutes ago. He knows it was me. He knows I handed over the files." "Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm at my grandmother's house, but Lena..." He said something strange. He said that if he's going to lose everything, he's going to make it worth it. He said that some people have to pay the ultimate price. A chill ran down Lena's spine. "Anna, what exactly did he say?" "He said your name, repeatedly, and then he said, 'She took everything from me, and now she'll understand what that means.'" Lena hung up and immediately called Weber. "Inspector, Christian Hoffman may be coming after me. We're tracking him. I'll send police protection to your residence immediately." But as Lena waited for the police to arrive, sitting alone in her apartment, the lights of Berlin flashing through the window, she couldn't shake the growing feeling of dread. Christian Hoffman was a man who had lost absolutely everything: family, career, reputation, freedom. And in the mind of a man like that, cornered and desperate, revenge might seem like the only thing that still made sense. The doorbell rang. Lena looked through the peephole. It wasn't the police. It was Christian Hoffman, and he didn't look like a man who had come to talk. 10:15 p.m., the final confrontation. "Lena, I know you're there." Christian's voice came through the door, too calm, dangerously calm. "Open the door. We need to end this." "The police are on their way," Lena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Christian, go away. Don't make things worse." "Worse?" He laughed, a humorless sound. "How could it get worse? You destroyed my entire life. My family hates me. My company kicked me out. I'm going to prison, so tell me, Lena, how exactly could I make it worse?" Lena heard something in his voice, something broken and dangerous. She backed away from the door, grabbing the phone to call the police again. That's when she heard the first blow to the door. Christian was trying to break down the entrance. The blows to the door grew more violent. Lena ran to the bedroom, locking herself in as she dialed emergency services with trembling hands. "Police! My address is Sonnenallee 147, apartment 304. Christian Hoffman is trying to break down my door." "Units are on their way, Frau Müller. Stay locked in. 2 minutes." But 2 minutes seemed like an eternity when she heard the front door give way with a crash. "Lena!" Christian's voice echoed through the apartment. He was inside. Lena pushed the dresser against the bedroom door, desperately searching for something she could use as a weapon. She grabbed a heavy lamp, her hands shaking. Christian banged on the bedroom door. "You don't understand, do you? I had everything, and you took it away from me." "You took it from yourself," Lena shouted back. "You abused your power. You hurt people. I just exposed the truth." "The truth?" Christian laughed bitterly. "The truth is that you destroyed a man for the sake of morality, and now you're going to understand the price of that." He started kicking the door. The wood cracked. That's when Lena heard sirens downstairs. Loud, multiple sirens. The police had arrived. "Police! Christian Hoffman, step away from the door." Christian stopped. Lena could hear his heavy breathing on the other side. Then, in a low voice, almost a whisper, he said, "You win, Lena. I hope you can live with that." Quick footsteps, sounds of struggle, shouts from police officers ordering Christian to lie down on the floor. And then, finally, silence. Saturday, 9 a.m. Police station Lena was sitting at the police station, covered with a blanket, still shaking as she gave her statement. Inspector Weber seemed genuinely concerned. "He's going to be charged with trespassing, attempted assault, threatening behavior, in addition to all the corporate crimes. He won't be out of prison anytime soon." "What about the women? Sandra, Petra, Julia?" "With the new evidence, they no longer need confidentiality agreements. The prosecutor is considering charging Christian with systematic harassment and abuse of power." Weber paused. "Lena, you saved these women, and yourself." But Lena didn't feel like a savior. She felt exhausted, broken, traumatized. When she finally returned home, escorted by the police, she found her mother waiting along with Anna Hoffman. "Anna?" Lena was surprised. "Are you okay?" The girl nodded, her eyes red. "My mother told me you were almost hurt because of the files I gave you. I'm sorry." "No," Lena said firmly, hugging the young woman. "You were brave. You did the right thing. Never apologize for that." 3 months later, Berlin Regional Court Christian Hoffman's trial was widely covered by the German media. For 3 weeks, the court heard devastating testimony. Sandra Meyer, now divorced but rebuilding her life, described the psychological manipulation. Petra and Julia corroborated the systematic pattern. Anna provided the irrefutable digital evidence. And Lena, with a firm and clear voice, explained how Christian had tried to destroy her when she dared to expose his crimes. Christian Hoffman sat in the dock, a changed man. Grey hair, hunched posture, empty gaze. When he had a chance to speak, he simply said, "I lost everything, and maybe I deserved it." The judge showed no mercy. "Christian Hoffman, you systematically abused your position of power. You manipulated vulnerabilities, silenced victims with money, and when confronted, attempted to destroy the life of an innocent person through additional crimes. You not only betrayed the trust of your employees, you betrayed the fundamental principles of justice and decency." The sentence, 12 years in prison on multiple charges, including fraud, falsification of evidence, systematic harassment, trespassing, and attempted assault. As the guards led Christian away, he looked back at Lena one last time. There was no anger in his eyes now, only emptiness. 6 months later, a new beginning. Lena was in her new office, smaller, more modest, but completely her own. She had opened her own corporate compliance and ethics consulting firm. Companies sought her out specifically because of her story, because of her courage. Sandra, Petra, and Julia became close friends. Together, they created a foundation to support women who suffered harassment in the workplace. Anna Hoffman, now 18, worked as an intern at the foundation, turning her pain into purpose. Fisher & Brown Consulting survived the scandal by completely revamping its policies under new leadership. Thomas Meyer, now CEO, implemented strict protocols against abuse of power. Lena looked out her office window, watching Berlin wake up to another day. Her phone rang. It was Klaus Braun, the founding partner. "Lena, I wanted to thank you personally for your courage, for not giving up. I just did what was right. And you almost paid with your life for it. That's more than courage. It's heroism." When she hung up, Lena thought about everything she had lost, her peace, her innocence, her naive confidence that doing the right thing would always be rewarded. But she also thought about what she had gained, her integrity, her purpose, and the certainty that some battles, however painful, are worth every scar. Lena was invited to speak at the Free University of Berlin, her old school. The auditorium was packed with young professionals eager to hear her story. "Many ask if I regret it," she began. "If it was worth losing so much, suffering so much, risking so much." She paused, looking at the attentive faces. "And my answer is always the same. Yes, because silence in the face of injustice is not neutrality, it is complicity. Christian Hoffman was not a monster. He was a man who, little by little, allowed power to corrupt his values, and that can happen to anyone who is not vigilant about their own privileges. So my advice to you, when you see something wrong, speak up, even if you tremble, even if it costs you, because your voice could be the difference between more victims or the end of a cycle of abuse." Applause filled the auditorium. After the lecture, a young student approached her. "Frau Müller, thank you for your courage. I was going through something similar in my internship and was afraid to speak up. But now I'm going to report it." Lena hugged the girl. "You are not alone. You never have been." And in that moment, looking at that young woman who now had the courage to use her voice, Lena knew that every moment of pain, every night of fear, every tear shed, it had all been worth it. Because she hadn't just saved herself. She had lit a light that would show the way for countless others.